So I thank the Honorable Governor for inviting me to speak to the leaders of universities, Tamil Nadu. The topic that was asked to set the stage for and then discuss with all of you is this topic of making Tamil Nadu a knowledge hub by collaborating. There are many universities. Tamil Nadu probably has, I don't know the exact whether we are the largest number in the country in any state or not, but we have a very large number of universities, both in the public sphere, public universities and private universities. So in some sense, it's a state with the highest GER probably in the country, and it's already a destination for students from all over the country and indeed from many parts of the world. The question before us is, with all this in place, can we do something more? Can we have a multiplier effect? Or at least can we achieve new, either to not unachieved outcomes by finding ways to partner? So it's a little bit of a hazy topic, I must say. I tried to reflect on the ways in which at IIT Madras we were able to achieve some of this during the time I was at in the leadership position, and even before that, and even now I'm an observer. And I know that many things do not carry over to other institutions because every institution, and particularly institutions that are governed by a different set of norms and have come from a different background in terms of how they were set up, how they are run, and so on. I know that many things just may not be able to be just transferred or carried over. I'm very, very acutely aware of that. So I do not want to make it out that whatever was done anywhere else abroad, from my own experience at IIT Madras, or from, indeed, and hopefully we'll share some experiences from your experiences, that is necessarily transferable to another institution. Some of it may be, some of it may not be, but I think all of you are, more than definitely in a position where you can judge this for yourself and take whatever you think can be done. But I would like to use this time to maybe, I would consider myself successful if I've managed to leave you with some thoughts that yes, probably you might have already been doing this in many ways, but there is much to be gained by collaborating, by partnering, and we may be able to achieve outcomes that we were not otherwise able to, or we are not otherwise able to do on our own. So that's really the broad thrust of my talk. I like to use examples as much as possible so that it doesn't become purely some kind of theory. So let me try, right? If it is not interesting, if it's boring, then please, I seek your indulgence. If I'm successful even partly, then I would consider the time has been spent in a worthy fashion. Next, I'll change. Sorry. So first is, we should ask ourselves, these terms are now, in fact, one of the things you notice in today's discourse is there are so many phrases that are used by everybody. It doesn't matter whether you're listening to the news or anybody's speech or anybody's reading, somebody's writing, so many phrases that are thrown in every sentence. So this knowledge hub is a very, very common phrase, So what is a knowledge hub? I mean, one can use it in many ways, but what is a knowledge hub? So it has to represent some kind of a focus for learning, understanding, deeply, something or the other, and in getting information also. This is, of course, becoming completely transformed by the way in which information can be obtained now using the internet, as well as using AI. But still, there is a difference between getting information from somebody who is an expert, a vidwan in their field, and trying to pick it up from the vast body of printed and stored knowledge on the internet. And skills, of course. Again, people who are very skilled, they pass it on. Skills are always passed on from generation to generation. If there's any skill that's surviving today, it's because it's been passed on by somebody. And these are all the things that are available in a focal point. This focal point is not necessarily a geographical focal point, meaning you need not be physically one place, though it could be in some places in the world they are there. It's more like a hub of a wheel to which all the spokes are pointing. So this could be a hub. The hub could involve actually many geographical locations, many universities in the state, but all other, that is the sort of the focus. If you reach this, if they are collaborating, if they are inter-networked, if they are well connected, a student, if they can reach this hub anywhere, they are probably in a position to access learning, understanding, skills, pretty much anywhere in the hub to some degree. This is the idea. And so that from outside, from the point of view of a student, either within the state or outside the state, in other parts of the country, or indeed, as I said, anywhere in the world, this looks like a point. Tamil Nadu looks like a point, but of course, given the history, this hub is spread out over many places. But if they reach this hub somehow, they can access the best possible available learning, understanding, skills. That would be I would say my understanding of what knowledge hub is. So it's going to be a distributed knowledge hub. As far as Tamil Nadu is concerned, there are so many state, central and private universities and colleges. I mean, we need not restrict ourselves to universities. We have so many well-established and long-standing colleges of where there's a lot of capability, a lot of expertise is available. And as well, and more importantly, and this is probably something I would like to focus on, we have so many traditional, non-formal centers of learning and skill. You take the arts, music, sculpture, and so on. In fact, it's fair to say most of the highest levels of expertise and knowledge resides outside our formal education institutional system. There are world-famous schools run by individuals in their homes or in some small place. There are sculptors in Swami Malai, in Kanchivaram, in Mahabalipuram, and so on. And that's where and the Sthapatis, and so on. Right? I mean, then there are goldsmiths. And so there are so many traditional, non-formal centers of learning. And, even for scriptural knowledge, pathshalas and so on. And traditional medicine also. So how do we establish a collaborative network? By connecting, not just the universities, colleges, which itself has many challenges. Connecting in order to be able to appear, as I told you, for the a student as one focal point. They can pretty much get, if it's available, get it, irrespective of where they reach out to in that hub. And can that be established to some degree? That is really the question. And I would like us to think about involving really the best non-formal centers of learning also. A lot of what is possible is now kept out of this hub because of our difficulties in dealing with these, what appear from the outside to be what the Americans call mom and pop operations. But some of them are so well known and so famous. You see students coming from all over the world seeking them out. So how does one involve them and make it available more readily to our own students from all over the country? So why collaborate at all, right? Why should we do this? Why not each institution just function as it is doing today? Why not these non-formal centers of learning just continue as they do? Well, they are doing it. Nobody's saying they shouldn't. Because each institution has its own ethos. As I told you, we've all come from different origins in how we were set up, how we are funded, how we are governed. Financial boundaries are very important, especially many public institutions. They are governed very strictly by financial rules. Students, admitted to one university, they have to get a degree from that university. So there are boundaries. There is infrastructure, which is always in India, given our economic history, is always under stress. And teachers are employed in a particular institution. Their first responsibility is towards that institution. So on. So why expand the scope and why try to interconnect? What is to be gained? That's a question to ask. Will it really multiply some outcomes? Will it actually benefit both the institutions and the students? Will the quality of the outcomes improve? Will the students get access to resources that otherwise are not available to them? And what about all the hurdles that we have to overcome? This is all going to bring with it, if we try some of this, it's going to bring with it a whole set of challenges, all kinds of objections, all kinds of hurdles, permissions, financial rules. So that's very often, it is the last line that many of us sort of balk against and say, okay, why stick my neck out? I'll just see what I can do within the institution and, finish my term. So there is a certain inertia that's created by that last bullet. So that's why I want to deal with that first. And because I think we may not want to admit it, we may like to talk about the good side, the benefits and so on. But if we don't talk about the potential hurdles that we all have to confront if we launch any collaboration, any such thing, then it's going to become very difficult to take it forward and we probably will end up giving up. So conduct rules, particularly in public institutions, but I dare say many private institutions have even stricter conduct rules than public institutions. So in India, very often conduct rules even include such thing as physical verification of presence twice a day. Because the reason is very often these rules we make them because of the few violations that have occurred in the past. And we think we can make it zero, and we make a lot of very, very tough rules. In many institutions, you have to show, sign or put your fingerprint or whatever in the morning and afternoon. When I was heading IIT, we had collaborations where even a dean almost or a senior person from the collaborating institution would ask me for an invitation saying that without the permission of my superior, I cannot visit your institution. I can't leave this place. So there are these things, and we have to, we have to figure this out. We can't just see, sometimes in our enthusiasm, we start something without figuring out some of these things, and all these things rear their heads. And then either we brush them aside and then land into all kinds of, unnecessary investigations and trouble and so on. Or we just give up. So it's important to spend some time and set up the processes to deal with this. Once you do that, I think many of these can be overcome. So we have to decide things like, are you going to treat it as leave? Are you going to treat it as on duty? What about misuse? Somebody actually going somewhere to do something else. So what about all these things? The solution, is to little bit think about this in advance when you set up the collaboration, because you don't want the problem bubbling up from the lower levels with already, statements having been put on file and so on. You want to make the rules in advance. So the operating principle should be trust. Just go by trust, but make the rules very clear that if you go on a collaboration, if you go on a visit, then it's expected to be on duty working. If you take time off and, because it's your hometown, it's fine. You can go in the evening to home, but you do something else. And if you are found out, the consequences have to be severe. I think that is more important than making all kinds of rules to actually save the person from doing something wrong. And why should we tell the person what's the right thing to do? And then if they do something wrong, if they get caught, then the consequences should be absolutely severe. This actually works very well. One glaring example of this is just the way exams are conducted in any of the IITs. Okay, there is no controller of examinations. There is nobody. The faculty member is expected to make sure the question papers are ready, make sure they are distributed in the exam. The faculty member will get a few invigilators to help, but that's it. It's the responsibility of the faculty member. And they have to collect the answer papers, they have to grade it, they have to deliver. potentially, it's open to all sorts of misuse. Leakage of paper, grading can be biased, so many. But, in the history of any IIT, not just one, there's not been a single instance of paper leakage or anything. And we don't require a huge infrastructure to do this examination business. On the other hand, let me tell you that if a faculty member is found to have done any of these things that I mentioned, I think the consequences will be very, very severe. First, because the community simply doesn't accept it. And then, of course, you'll be surprised, the conduct rules in our service rules are very, very strict, actually, from British time. So you can, and we have taken, this has never happened, but in other things where some faculty particularly, if they do anything that is on the wrong side of integrity, we come down very hard. I think that is the operating way we have to do it. If you set up all these rules that try to prevent it, then actually you can't, if they get away with it, you can't do anything, because you have set up all these rules, procedures, and yet they've got away with it. So you can't do anything about it, right? So it's very important to remove many of these impediments, which are there in many institutions. I know it, we also had many things. So avoid chaining up people whose intentions are honorable, just in a bid to prevent the few who might be having some wrong ideas. But make it very clear. Nobody should be able to say, where is it written like this? I didn't know. Make it very clear what the norms are. It need not be very precise. A person at the level of a faculty member, or if they are told you're expected to make sure that you don't indulge in misconduct, they should know what's misconduct. You don't have to spell it out in detail. Academic regulations. This is another, Senate or whatever the body, syndicate, or I don't know what it's called in universities. There is a body that finally is the one that approves curricula, approves programs, approves degrees, and grants them. And credits, how many credits, and so on. And this should never be, the rigor of this should never be bypassed in any institution. I mean, this is absolutely a must. In an eagerness to do something and to move fast and so on, one cannot do post facto approvals and so on. It's very bad. The homework must be done, must be taken through the process. Whatever you're doing, if you're coming up with a joint degree program, anything, even a program which involves only collaboration at the instructional level, it's better to bring it up front, get the approval, go through the discussions, go through the arguments, change people's minds, work on them in advance. If you anticipate there are people who are going to object, talk to them, convince them. This is a very absolute must. It's not difficult to do this, it just requires planning and work. And if you're proposing collaborations with peer institutions, other universities, private or public, it shouldn't matter, and even affiliated colleges of good standing, it's not too difficult to get a good program approved. There may be instances where in some places there is some conservative approach or some naysayers and so on. Okay, here and there may be. But by and large, I think one will get, if the homework is done, one can get this approved. Much harder, of course, to establish collaborations with the non-formal institutions. People are very worried about approving this. Even if they recognize that a particular institution is world-class and has a real top person, they'll worry about what are we setting a precedent? What if tomorrow there's a proposal for some other not so good institution? What happens if that individual passes on? There'll be a lot of concerns, okay? These are genuine concerns. This is not a... but I think, therefore, this is harder to do, but it's really worth doing because there's so much expertise, so much capability available in the non-formal learning centers in this state particularly. And they couldn't care less. Some of those people who are really the best experts in their field, they may not even have a high school degree or a graduation degree. They couldn't care less. It's up to us to see how they can pass on their capabilities and knowledge to the next generation, other than what they're doing on their own. So this is something that is harder to crack. And the way we have tried to do this at the IIT system, in IIT Madras also we have done this, is to adopt a sort of a approach where we find a way to, the expert needs acknowledgement that he or she is an expert. That's part of the process of this whole way by which you transfer the knowledge and understanding to the next generation. So you need to find a way to recognize the individuals, the individual human resources, and their contributions so that they can be accessed formally. There have to be some way in which they're recognized as somebody, something in the system. This is, because very often if you're doing it for the right capable people, it overcomes the issue of what happens after the person passes on. That institution may go, become basically a hollow shell. Yet if we have a partnership, then what happens and so on. Recognizing the individual takes care of that issue because this recognition lasts only as long as the individual is capable of partaking of his or her knowledge. And the contribution of the non-formal institution to any joint program can be acknowledged in many ways, through publicity, through very clearly making everybody clear that this institution is also playing a role in this program. But you don't necessarily have to have a joint degree program or even a partnership as peers. You don't have to do that. That's not required. So I'll give you some examples. And the other major hurdle to collaboration, and we'll come back to these points. If you saw there, I put a red star there because I'm going to come back to this. There are financial hurdles to collaboration. In any organization, there are boundaries, financial boundaries. People like to make out that only public institutions have this, but it's true of any organization. Private institutions, whether it's a company or whether it's a university, will all have very clear financial boundaries. And they are sacrosanct. You can't let financial resources leak into or out of the institution. And this is particularly, government funds, there are very clear rules. And these should not be flouted or bypassed. I've seen programs flounder, good programs flounder because somebody didn't spend the time to take care of this, and then once something happens, then the whole thing has to be killed. Just because it's a creative program, something is being attempted which has never been done before, it's not an excuse for not taking care of financial rules. Actually, it turns out that if you look a little carefully, in most institutions, the rules will permit most expenditures for bona fide employees and students of that institution. Many times some interpretation of rules, some layers have been added that make it appear much harsher than they are. The rules themselves imposed by the state for public institutions or the federal state, the government, they usually allow. You may have to go through some processes, you may have to go through some procedures. If you automate them, if you set them up clearly, and the mindset has to be, you can't complain all the time about processes and procedures if you want to use public money. You have to do this. So if you set that up, then these can be handled. Documentation and approval processes are very important, and they have to be set up. They have to be made, smooth and automated and so on. And but even then there are certain expenditures that the rules may not permit. I'm not trying to give examples, but these may vary from whether it's a private institution, state-funded institution, central institution, and so on. But they will be there. And therefore, and some of these some of these new ideas, new programs may require some modest amount of money that cannot be spent from the public funds that you have. Or even in private institutions, there may be some such constraints. So you may need some I'll tell you, very often these amounts are modest. And you may need to, and how do we get that? That's another point that I'll come back. Okay? Then, as I told you, inertia. Why get into all this, right? Just asking for trouble. One can, of course, take that attitude and just lay back. But, and the important point is the collaborations are made and unmade by people, by the faculty involved, by the students involved. As institutional heads, you may initiate something, or best is actually if the proposal comes from below and you actually become a champion and make it happen. That's the best. But even if you initiate it, and so it's, seed the idea into the faculty and talk to your counterpart in some other institution and set up the collaboration and so on, the best approach is to wait and watch. Let the department, schools, faculty members drive the collaboration. Don't drive it too hard from the top, beyond a point. Because if it peters out because of lack of interest from below, it's better. It's better to fail early than to fail late, like startups. It's like a startup, actually, any such new approach. Better to fail early and just move on. There are other good ideas that may be worth your energy. So not try to, put something on artificial respiration and try to keep it alive because you started it. I mean, it's not... there are many things I attempted in my 10 years as director, and some of them petered out. I just let it die. I remember organizing a very, globally renowned individual for some potential collaboration across 2 departments of my institute. And after the meeting, I found that they didn't come back. They didn't come back to me and say, how do we get this person again? We need to figure out things and so on. Then I realized they're not interested. And so I called the particular individual and told him, I'm very sorry, I should not have wasted your time, but this is the situation and we'll drop it. So it's very important to not push too much, but the ones that are picked up by the faculty and the students will actually are the ones who are likely to yield benefits. Okay, that's very important. So now we'll come to 2 broad sets. Collaboration between peer institutions represented by among those of you who are here today and some of you who aren't. These are institutions in the state sector, in the formal sector, in the private sector, which have been set up formally with recognition and so on. So these institutions, it's an order of magnitude easier, as I said, to set up collaborations. And there's really no excuse for not doing something which will yield, where 1 + 1 is much greater than 2. So the faculty from 2 or more of such institutions and their students will end up producing what they cannot do individually. Very simple things. There may be instrumentation that one of them has and the other doesn't, but the faculty member who is interested in collaborating from the institution that doesn't have the instrument may actually be very capable in that area. So even the collaborating faculty from the institute that has the instrument stands to benefit, because now you have unlike minds joining together to work on some new research problem along with their students. So that is a very thing. Pooling ideas that follow, as I said, the moment you don't work alone, the moment you work with another person or 2 who has the same expertise, you get so many more new ideas. And if you look at even the record of publications, the highly cited publications that come out all over the world, there is enough data available that a large fraction of them actually come out because there are collaborations. So people have actually turned it around, and in many institutions they've made collaboration therefore a very important target, because they believe by that way they will get better output. But actually we all know from our own experience as researchers, it is indeed true. A student in a particular institution may actually be able to access an expert in some particular niche area who doesn't exist in their own institution. So this may not be a collaboration between faculty necessarily across 2 institutions or more, but maybe a student in one accessing the knowledge of a faculty member in the other, with some maybe local guidance from their own mentor, faculty, supervisor, and so on. Or, as I said, an expensive instrument, right? This could happen not just in science. This could happen in history, in mathematics. I remember that in the faculty in the mathematics department of IIT Madras, they came to me when I was director and said, look, we don't need instruments, we don't need funds to do experiments and all that. We actually need money, support only to visit each other and spend several weeks during the vacation. And many rules in the government funding schemes don't allow. They have a limit on the amount you can spend on travel, and they view that as a unnecessary expenditure. But in mathematics, actually, that's all they need. They really need to sit together with somebody else, and only then the new ideas come out. It's very hard for a person sitting alone, just with their own students, to make significant progress. They can do some things, but not... So we need to find ways to overcome these challenges. As I said, And sometimes if the rules don't permit, that's where you have to get some philanthropic money. And for these kind, usually the amounts are not small. How much does a person need to go to another place and stay for a month, especially if they have subsidized guest house and so on? It doesn't cost much. So we have to enable that. So it's not just the sciences that benefit from collaboration, even history, even so there is one place where there is an archaeologist doing some kind of digs, and the student is interested in another place. How does the person team up with that? And the last is in our core role of imparting education. You can team up to offer online programs, extension programs, executive programs. You may not be able to collaborate too much in your regular academic offerings, which are classes are held every day and so on. But so many of these other programs, executive programs, online programs. So in IIT Madras, we are having so many online programs. The NPTEL program is a vast collaboration involving so many institutions over the last 15 years, 20 years, I would say almost. And now in our online courses, we have faculty from many places who teach. It doesn't have to be our own faculty. Because as I said, we throw it open. If we don't get sufficient interest from our faculty, it doesn't mean we don't do it. We just find faculty from elsewhere who are interested and we do it. So, these are all things. And this is where you can actually get expertise even from non-formal centers of learning. And we'll talk about how, one way in which it can be done. So we need to make some things simpler. Like, for example, if students particularly need to visit collaborating peer institutions, this is at least still with peer institutions. So they have to go to another university, spend a month or this entire summer. So they have to be enabled to get hostel. So sometimes simple hostel rules may not permit that. Somebody would have written some rule somewhere to overcome some other misuse, that your hostel rooms are only for students of that institution. So one has to look at these and make the modifications of the rules in a way in which we enable these simple things, but don't open the floodgates to all kinds of, because there are limited resources, so you have to worry about that. But and even to provide travel support, for them to pay for their travel and so on. So we have to work around these hurdles. And surprisingly, sitting at the leadership level in your institution, you may think that the various people in charge of these things will take care of it. But the rule-bound behavior increases exponentially as you go down the hierarchy. So people will not budge from the rules because they don't want to be held responsible. So often it turns out that in public institutions particularly, the leadership has to spend time looking at these small things, as we call it. And in advance, make sure, so like a chess game, you have to sort of, when you start a new program and you think it's important, you have to worry about what are the things that can come and become hurdles in the financial rules, in the, operating conduct rules, in the way in which the institutions are run, and simple things in advance itself, clean it up so that these hurdles don't come. Just imagine the process of collaboration, see what might come in the way, and clean this up. Because otherwise, once the thing starts, all of these become a real-time problem, and then we do things in a hurry, and then we don't do things properly, and then that becomes a reason to choke the program. So there's no need to flout rules. I mean, this is something I want to repeat again and again. There's no need to do them. Many of them can be modified just minimally to take care of these issues. And therefore, from the top, we need to give some guidance and interpretation. And maybe here and there, some relaxation. Some rules that were made long ago for some other reason, we can relax them. So, and peer-institute collaborations are very important. So before we even go to collaborating with other non-peer institutions, like, as I said, the non-formal centers of learning, because why is it important? Even large institutions, you might say, why do I need to collaborate? Anything that is any knowledge that is needed in the areas in which we are offering programs, we have it here. Well, that's not true, right? Because faculty, particularly in India, but anywhere in the world, join institutions taking multiple constraints of theirs into account. Where there is a vacancy at the time they finish, they're ready for joining the faculty. Where it depends on where there are vacancies. either the new institutions have been set up or old institutions, retirements have happened and so on. Where are the vacancies? Very often they would like to be in or near their hometown. And the very important issue nowadays is the spouse needs a job. And where would that be facilitated? So all of these things become the constraints, and faculty join institutions not just because that is the institution that is best suited for their academic role. So the best collaborating teams that could emerge are not necessarily co-located. There are too many variables in this to say that will happen. You have to assume, therefore, that the best collaborations, many of them may emerge only if people are able to collaborate across institutions. And that is one reason why peer institutions should collaborate. And for us, for universities, the outcomes are what? We don't have we don't declare annual results, Prof, PAT and dividend and so on. For us, the outcomes are our research and teaching outcomes, our graduation outcomes. And students, these are all important. These are the all important outcomes. So if collaborations across institutions, therefore, increases our research output, better papers, better cited papers, papers that people talk about, better students, graduate students, better PhD output who are sought after as potential faculty in other universities, then we have really, by collaborating, if we get more of this, then it becomes a very important thing to do. And one good thing is in the technology that has come in the last decade, online collaboration, we have learned how to use it. It was there even before COVID, but COVID forced us to learn. And there's so much we are able to do now with online collaborations and meetings that the process of collaborating has become that much more easier and more efficient. And the last thing is expensive equipment which cannot be procured individually at one or more institutions. They can be shared very well. Here I want to, give you an example. Some 7-8 years back, the instruments that cost several $1 million, 20 crores, 30 crores, these became important for academic research. Globally, the number of such instruments sold are known. It's not very large. The company selling it usually is only one, and they know how many they sell per year and so on. So it's not something that they expect to sell in large numbers. It's very expensive. So you have to set up shared facilities. So when such instruments needed to be procured, even with the budgets that IITs have, it's not possible for any IIT to think of procuring it for themselves. Then we tried to figure out how can we do this. And now we have a template which has been fine-tuned, and now DST is adopting it for many such large valued infrastructure. So we set up national facilities. We operate them 24 hours. And the participating institutions which pool the resources to set up the facility all have, they have proportionate access. It will all be done online, the booking of their access. Our guest houses are guaranteed that anybody who has to travel for using the instrument will be given the room and so on. And we have 24-hour, 7 days a week, trained technicians supplied by the instrument vendor so that the instrument is never idle and used fully. So it's possible to collaborate to do these things. And that is the only way you can, in fact, get instruments that cost 30 crores and 40 crores and so on. Now I'll come to the harder thing, which is collaborating with non-peer institutions. When I say non-peers, I mean they are actually very good in what they do, but they don't have a formal recognition. They are not set up with UGC approval or parliament approval or state government approval by an act. They are just set up by themselves. They don't even give formal degrees, but everybody knows that in this field, they are the last word, the best, one of the best in the world, and so on. And, leading Tamil artist, for example. I remember I was governing council of Central University of Tanjavur when it was set up. And we were struggling, to set up the infrastructure, to get faculty and so on. So for the music program, I was thinking, why can't we, tap into some of the really good people, in the Delta region. In fact, there was a world-renowned Tamil artist who was living there. He had not shifted to Chennai at that time. I don't know if he's even now he lives there. Tirupangur Muthukumaraswamy. So I was suggested, why can't, but there was no way. There are so many rules to take advantage of any such capability there, right there. So this is what I meant, right? But the Americans, find a way for everything. They're very enterprising, and they created this thing called Professor of Practice, I believe in the year 2000 or so in MIT. And many universities in America quickly adopted it. I don't know if it's adopted in many other countries in the world, but in America it's very common. And in the IIT system, we adopted it sometime around 2014, 15. In fact, I was the one who asked for it. And now, of course, UGC has also set up everything for it. Many of you may be already operating the system, I don't know. But this is the link in UGC that tells you how you can do this. It's a very liberal system. In fact, it allows you to appoint any individual without requirements of PhD and so on as a professor of practice. There are some norms, what you can do, what you can't do, to make sure that, and the norms have been very well thought out, they're fairly liberal, and you can appoint these people. And this, it turns out, this recognition is very important for them. So in IIT Madras, for example, we have professors of practice, and if you want to know more, you can ask my colleague, Professor Murali, who's here. He's a dean of faculty. So we have professors of practice from the armed forces, retired armed forces people. We have doctors. We have artists. We have people from the scientist lab, the DRDO, and all kinds of people from industry. And they really help in that particular area where they're an expert. They're not meant for your teaching. This is not a way to get, to overcome faculty shortage. It's not. In fact, I don't know, I've not read the UGC document fully, but the corresponding document with the IITs tell very clearly that they're not meant for teaching. And they don't count towards your faculty load, numbers. Even the remuneration has all been very well described, very well settled there. So, and I've seen the individuals whom we have appointed. For them, I know this is very important. They'll really covet this title, And so this is one of the enablers that has been done to enable this hard collaboration. Not moving. Can you move it? Not moving. Okay. It's very important to have a proper process for this. Though the scheme is very liberal, if you appoint one too many people who should not have been appointed, mistakes always happen. But then internally, the respect for this thing will go, and externally also it will go, and then nobody will want it. The whole thing will die. Very important to maintain the standard of people. By and large, everybody who's appointed, people must feel, yeah, they are really, vidwans and in their field. And we are proud to have them on as professor of practice. They are very proud to associate with the institution and so on. And they could be any one of them. I just gave examples, and we have had all such people as professors of practice. And there must be a reason for engaging the person. This is another very important. It may be a very acknowledged, very great person. You shouldn't appoint a person just to adorn put it on the website. There should be a reason. There must be a program that actually benefits from that person's association, and that person should also get something to do through this association. That's very important. And you should avoid, as I said, people who shouldn't be appointed. One or two mistakes can happen, but it should be minimal. And it may be very difficult, in fact, impossible to set up a joint degree program or even a joint diploma program with these non-formal institutions. It's very hard because there are many issues to worry about. And I can see why the academic senate or syndicate may not want to venture that route. But there's no difficulty in appointing POPs, and through them, actually, you are recognizing their institution. And in fact, their institution may or may not last beyond them, so it's also fine. And but you can have MOUs for what you want to do jointly. So the institution may have some resources. You want to use that, mostly human resources, and you want to associate. They want to be publicly known as associating with your institution. It's all fine. You can do that, right? But the degrees or diplomas may be entirely awarded by the formal institution. So this is a model that can work very well, and I want you to think about it. Then what about money? As I said, for all these things, like professors of practice, to host faculty in your institution as guest visiting faculty, for student scholarships, for your own students, for travel to the other institution on official, when they're sent on duty, they're paying for the hostel accommodation, all of that, or guest house, all of this usually is already permitted in our rules. It's not at all difficult. Okay? There may be a need for some expenditures that rules may not normally allow. I don't want to go into examples, but they could arise. In each program specifically, may be somewhat different, and it may arise. And rather than try to, cut corners and try to make it appear like some other expense and so on, it's better not to go that route. If you're running a program that is attractive, experience tells us that it's not difficult to find some philanthropic donor who's willing to support that program, who wants his name or her name to be associated to that program, especially when you have some really well-known, people associated with the program and so on. There will be people who come forward. For them, that is their passion. If it's sculpture, they are passionate about sculpture. If it's dance, or if it is traditional healing, whatever it is, there are people who will come forward. And the amounts you need for that, for the expenditure that is not normally permitted with public funds, is not very large. It's much smaller than what you need for the overall program, if you count the salaries and scholarships of all the students who are involved and faculty who are involved. And for the donor, for a fairly small sum, they get associated with a large program. So actually, it's fairly attractive. So from experience, we have found that going and trying to get some philanthropic support to get that little bit of discretionary funding capability is not difficult. And the leadership has to do it. It can't be done by the faculty and students. The leadership has to do it, but you can get it. You have to, of course, acknowledge their contribution, maybe name the program after them or name some event after them and so on, acknowledge them in a public event. All of this you have to do, but it's okay. It's all for a good cause, right? And so I would say that, why did we go back? Okay. So the leadership has to work to get the philanthropic grants, and the amount that you need for such things is usually very modest. That's what we have found. And they are very happy that such a small amount that they're giving, they don't say it's small, they don't say it, but is going a long way, and they're getting attached to a fairly large effort, which they would never have been able to conceive of and support on their own. The last thing is, there is a desire to form large consortia. All universities in the state, 10 universities get together, do something. You can do it for a few things, like the shared facilities and so on. Yes, 40 crores, you want to buy an instrument, 20 institutions get together, it's possible. It's possible to allot time to all of them and do it. It's possible to do joint teaching programs with a large consortium. NPTEL is a good example. Some umbrella mission mode programs, like what this DST launches on cyber-physical systems or something, it appears to be a large consortium, but actually work is going on fairly independently in many places. That's also possible. But real collaborating consortia, collaborating on research, large consortiums are rare. They're very difficult to make it work because the faculty involved, the human beings involved have to make it happen. And there are so many ifs and buts that it doesn't usually happen. So I would say, if it happens, it's good, but it has to be really bottom up. The large collaboration must emerge from the bottom. So when there's no other way to do something, they do happen, they do work. You look at CERN, for example. CERN is a huge collaboration on a global scale. In one of their papers, the number of authors runs into a few thousand. Okay? But that's because you can't build those things. You just can't dream of it otherwise. But otherwise, there are too many friction points to make large collaborations work. So I would not attempt large consortia unless it is very clear that it's for a specific thing like a shared facility or a shared joint program or something. Large research consortia, from whatever I have seen, they don't achieve too much. So using these collaborations, what can we ensure? We can ensure that a student who needs a course that is taught only in one place by one expert, these are all typically at an advanced level, postgraduate level, can access that course. Just because it is not available in that student's university, it doesn't become inaccessible to that student. Must be a way for the student to even go for 4 months to another university and take that course and transfer credits. We must be enable these collaborations. These are all usually two-way. A researcher who needs access to an instrument or needs to collaborate with a peer in another institution should be able to do this with support from the institutions, their parent institutions, with encouragement. Not that they don't want you to do it and you somehow do it despite their opposition. And they can usually produce together much better output than they could have done working on their own. This is particularly true in mathematics and social sciences and so on, not just in the sciences. And the last thing, as I said, is we have a lot of expertise in the non-formal sector because our traditional education system, which underwent a lot of stress in the last 2 centuries, but some of it survived, or skill system, wherever it survived, it is always in the non-formals. It was because whatever formal systems were there before 200 years ago were all destroyed. So that expertise lies only with the non-formal sector, and we can't just, not tap into them. I'll give you the example of the National Center for the Safety of Heritage Structures, which is there in IITM. When this center was set up, this deals with our ancient structures. How do you ensure their structural safety, not on the art aspects, not on the other aspects? So, if you don't understand the engineering behind those structures, it's not possible to ensure the safety of their structures, unless you completely demolish it and redo it, which is of course defeats the whole purpose. So my colleagues who are running this center wanted some sthapati, to find a sthapati who would be able to share that traditional knowledge to whatever degree it exists. They managed to find one who had studied this and was able to communicate with this idea in mind, collect their thoughts and communicate and so on. We recorded all those lectures. They're all in Tamil. You can go to YouTube. You can find them. There are 40. It's a full course. Then the collaboration is extended beyond that. The person doesn't belong to any formal institution. We have to enable these things. Otherwise, we can't do what has to be done. So this is the example I wanted to share with you. Right? So together, if we do this, we can actually fly high, because definitely we are much more than the sum of our parts if we do this. There's enough evidence of this from whatever we have seen. I'm sure many of you have also. I know many collaborations exist among the universities in Tamil Nadu, so this is not something I'm saying that you don't know. But it does require proactive push from the leadership. Every new leader in their stint must increase the spectrum of such collaboration. And we need to break some rules and constraints, very minimally, no big modification. Break is the wrong word. Just take care of something. Just using a noble cause argument will not work. Saying, I'm doing such a great thing, why should I worry about rules? That argument never works. Nothing is so great. You have to worry about the rules and set them right. And we need to harness the excellence that is residing in our non-formal centers of learning. Otherwise, and doesn't mean that they have to be made formal. There are many hurdles in making them formal, including the fact that the institution's long-term survival is not necessarily assured. But when the expertise exists, they must be able to benefit as many students and next generation as possible. And within our existing administrative framework, whether it's in the private sector or whether in the public sphere, we can do this just with some modest philanthropic funds here and there that may help. Right? And not every attempt will succeed. If any of us tries 10 different things, only 4 may succeed. But that's fine. We must have a way to quickly exit the other 6 and not waste our time on that. Right? So it's a market-driven approach. You have an idea, you try to create the collaboration, you throw it open, you see how the uptake is. If it's not there, let it go and go on to something else. If it is there, because something can go wrong. You may try to associate with a non-formal sector expert. The expert may have some bees in their bonnet and it may not happen. Fine, drop it, and so on and so on. Okay? And we have to reinforce those that work. This is all I have to share with you. Now I think we can discuss, ask questions, whatever. Thank you. I hope it's been useful. I don't know. These are much, much harder to do than in my subject. Okay. So
questions?